Advice I would have found useful. Maybe it can be useful to you. Okay, so your bus is rusty. Probably most buses are. The good news is that finding body panels is easy. The bad news is that when compared to mechanical work, body work is way more messy, complex, fussy, and imprecise. But look, you're going to give it a try anyway because you can, because it's good to take risks, because the only way you're going to get better at something is to fail a few times. And yes, it will feel terrible to cut up your bus. Yes, you will feel discouraged to find more rust underneath. It's normal to feel overwhelmed. After you cut everything out, you might find layers of Bondo half an inch thick and realize the problem is much worse than you thought. But this is all good, and you're going to get through it, and here are some things you'll need along the way. You can buy a used MIG welder for a couple $100. MIG stands for metal inert gas, and for the best results you would use a solid core wire and the machine would use a gas cylinder. But we're cheap, and we're going to use a flux core wire and no gas cylinder. The disadvantage to flux core is that there's going to be splatter, but we can handle that. Also, you're going to confirm the polarity of these two wires. They change depending on if you were using solid core or flux core. And if they aren't set correctly, your welds will look terrible. Get a few different sizes of wire and experiment. You'll need contact tips for the end of the welding gun. You'll need contact tips corresponding to each size wire you have. The contact tips transfer the current and they are frequently burned or fouled, so you'll be replacing them regularly. You'll need a welding helmet. You'll need welder's gloves, a respirator, and cartridges because welding fumes are toxic. Also, find some fire-resistant overalls. To cut metals, you'll need an angle grinder with both cutting discs and grinding discs. Get a full face shield and bring a fire extinguisher. Buy a die grinder and some wire wheels and bits to prep the metal surfaces. Drills just won't spin fast enough for the job. Finally, you'll need your replacement panels and also some sheet metal stock to fabricate with. Got all that? Okay, here we go. Cut out all the bad stuff and try to clean up all the surfaces. Spray inside with rust inhibitor. Fabricating shapes is fun once you get used to it. You're going to use a lot of cutting discs. You can't weld in the same spot for too long. The area will absorb too much heat and warp the surface. You will have to weld a little bit and keep moving. You probably go from one end to the other several times before you get the whole thing. Body filler is the most unpleasant and messy step, but if you mess it up, you can just sand it down and start again. Body work is something you can work on for days and still find imperfections. At some point, depending on how much time and patience you have, you'll have to decide that it looks good enough and just finish the job. And if you choose to, you can look closely and see all the mistakes you made. But you're not going to do that, because the only person looking at those mistakes is you. And by all accounts, the bus looks way better than when you started this. And maybe it was rough going some days, but you're glad you took the plunge, and life is good, and we don't forget that.